What's going on, yo? How's your guys' day going? Hope you're having a good day. My day's good. Thank you for asking. Something I feel like is very common, but not spoken of very much, is moving on, right? It's a very normal thing. Everybody goes through it one time or another, regardless of what it is. The most common one would obviously be relationships, having to move on from friendships, having to move on from romantic relationships, you name it, right? Or family. Sometimes people unfortunately are separated from their families. But what I don't notice or see as often is the explanation behind not just why, but what moving on really is. And I feel like it makes it hard. It makes it harder than it needs to be, basically. It makes it very tedious. It makes it almost like a fight. It makes it a fight, which moving on isn't. Moving on is not something that you fight against. It isn't something that you have to grind through. It isn't a, how should I say? It isn't something don't get me wrong, the saying, you get through it, that does apply, but I feel like that's it misses the mark, right? It misses the mark just a tad, just enough to the point that it gets confusing, right? And so what I think is that moving on is essentially a denomination or a type of acceptance, right? Because when we typically hear of moving on, it's almost as if it's like a replacement, or as if it's something that you have worked towards, or you have gained something or replaced something, or now have something that you once did not, right? The example would be, oh, I broke up with so-and-so, I moved on, right? I'm better now, I'm chilling. Don't get me wrong, if that's the way you feel and you're happy about that, that's fine. But I feel like that's usually not what it is. What it typically is a mask, right? It's typically a mask. It's typically someone who is trying to convince themselves, essentially, that they have moved on and that they're with somebody better now, right? You hear stuff like that, right? It's those very, very subtle things that make the difference. The sentence, oh, I moved on, I'm better now, and the sentence, oh, I moved on, I got so-and-so now. Those are two very different sentences, and you can clearly tell what the person is saying, or at least if you are a keen individual, you would be able to tell what that person is trying to say. And so it makes me sad. It makes me sad because it's almost like those really cringy Sigma videos, alpha male videos, where you're supposed to be something, or you're supposed to have been renewed for some reason, right? When moving on is very similar to being at peace. It's something that exudes from you very naturally. It's something that there's no no real, effort. There's no action being taken behind moving on. Moving on is understanding the situation for what it is, number one. I think that's the most important aspect, for starters, is knowing what happened and what didn't happen. Because you see too often, people want to not only convince others, but convince themselves that there was a specific narrative, right? And that they were wronged, or that something had happened. And if that is true, that's fine. However, you see too much centeredness on those aspects, which is what makes me, raise my eyebrows I don't know, it seems a little suspicious. Because typically when somebody moves on, you can see it in them because they won't talk about it, or it won't bother them, or it won't be something of them. And yet every single time, not every time, Most of the time that you see when you're friends, somebody you're talking to, you know, or an old friend, or you're chopping it up with somebody and they bring it up, right? I mean, to me at least, they haven't moved on. And don't get me wrong, like if they're just talking about it, that's one thing. Or like, especially if somebody had asked, right? Like if I had been like, oh, you know, what happened with so-and-so? And then they tell you, oh, that's not what I'm talking about, right? Those aren't the scenarios that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people who just bring it up for any reason, or they want to talk about it all the time. And then, you know, that's what their whole life revolves around. And that's obvious, right? We know that. That's not anything new. But the part that I'm focusing on, ironically, is their focus of the thing. You see, moving on, when you know that you've moved on from something, and again, this could be anything, right? It could be a scenario, for example, like let's say you got fired, or you're in a new, you know, like you messed up, you made a mistake, right? Like you did something that you weren't supposed to do, you know, and it could be anything. You typically see other aspects. You'll see other things a part of this person's life now. Where it could be anything. It doesn't have to be like, you know, like they don't have to be better in order to have moved on. But there will be other aspects and there will be other things that they're focusing on. And not as a distraction. That's the big difference, is that you see too often the first thing that people think, or the first thing that people are told, is, oh, well, you need to start doing this. Oh, well, you need to have this. Oh, you know, just do this. Oh, just do this. As if it's a replacement, like I said earlier, you know, as if it's a replacement for what had happened to you. And that's not what moving on is at all. You are not meant to necessarily have gained a thing to have succeeded. The same way that success is not a reward as a tangible thing, right? It's not so, I guess, literal. It's not so in your face. It's very subtle. It's very, it's not loud. That's a good way to put it. It's not loud. And more often than not, the loudest people are the ones who are trying to hide something, or trying to convince a narrative, or convince something. But I believe that the reason why, which is, you know, what this video is about, is that these people think that is the way that it is. They genuinely think that that's what they're supposed to be doing. They think that that is what moving on is. And nobody ever tells them otherwise. Nobody ever tells them, you know, hey man, it's okay to let that thing hurt for a time, for a season though. That's the most important part. You know, if you tell somebody that they can be hurt, that's all they're going to do. But it's in their timing. Where, you know how we always say, time heals. But as long as you're not continuing to injure yourself, right? Or rather, a better way to put it would be constantly hitting the wound. You're constantly touching at that wound. You're constantly trying to bring it back, then it's never going to heal, right? And it's so funny because we seem to have convinced ourselves that moving on is having gained something, or thinking in a very particular way about the situation, right? Like, again, we'll use the wound analogy. If you're wounded and you leave it alone and you take your time, you don't go back to the wound. You don't do anything with the wound, right? You just let it heal, or, you know, patch it up, whatever, right? But what you don't do, you don't go and start talking all types of nonsense about the wound, whatever the thing is that hurt you, right? You don't think about it. It's not something that's a part of you anymore. That's what moving on is. But instead, all we see is this very, very weird sense of centeredness about the thing that happened to you, right? And again, it could be anything. Like, you get fired from AM/PM, and you're working at somewhere else now, and you're talking to your coworker, the first thing that comes out of your mouth shouldn't be, oh, screw A and BM. They did this, they fired me for whatever reason, right? And then your coworker is going to look at you and just be like, okay, what does that have to do with anything? And the answer is nothing. It has nothing to do with you. And it's not supposed to. But instead, we have created some of the most obscure mentalities or philosophies for moving on, right? You see it all the time. It's always taking down one thing to lift up yourself. It's always screw that thing. It's always anger. It's always hatred for some reason. And I don't know why. Because moving on has nothing to do with like having won, right? You're better now, and you get to heal, and you get to go try again, and you get to go do something else. But instead, we're told that it's like it's okay. It's supported. And that's the weirdest part to me. I have no idea why. Like, if you go and you talk to your friends, or you go talk to a family member, whatever, and you're talking about a situation that happened to you, and, you say something like, oh, screw that person, screw that company, screw them, I'm doing better now, da 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 da. People are going to look at you and they'll be like, yeah, good for you, stand up for yourself. And look, yeah, it's cool to stand up for yourself, but you don't have to be in pain. It's okay. But we're not told that. And that's the part that makes me so sad. That's the part that makes me upset, is that you would think these things are obvious and you would think these things would just come naturally, but I guess not. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know where it comes from, that just being in pain, being bitter. Being bitter is the cost of not letting go. Like, have you ever seen those videos of people who go around and they ask strangers different questions? There's a bunch of people who do them. I can't think of the specific person I'm thinking of. But there was this person who was going around asking elderly people, questions. And there was this one old lady who was bitter as hell. She was like, oh, forget men, don't get with men, just stay, to yourself, do your own thing, try to, find your own way. Like, just saying, like, basically stay away as far away as possible from men. And, whatever you think is fine, that's a very weird thing to say to other people, especially the up and coming generation, right? Like, if you have your mentalities, if you have a certain way that you think about things, by all means, keep it to yourself, though. That's the part that's weird, because it's one thing to think that way, especially at that age, but just in general, right? Regardless of your age, it's one thing to get to that point, but then it's even weirder if you're spreading that, right? If you want to talk about it. And people aren't told. We don't talk about it. Nobody says, hey man, it's okay to be hurt, but you have to move on. You have to come to terms with what happened. It's far too often that people want to negotiate. They want to know why. They want to talk about it. They want to figure it out. They want to go over it again. They want to fix it. They always have to return to the original point. If you are in a race and you win the race, the first thing you're thinking about is not the start line. You don't go back. There's no going back. But I don't know. And the thing that I think about when it comes to anger is the quote by C.S. Lewis, where he says, I sat down with anger long enough, and she told me her real name was grief. Which is very beautiful, but I feel like it applies to this situation perfectly. Because we always want to be vindicated. We always want revenge. There always has to be a win. It can never just be enough that you've gotten past it. That in of itself should be enough, but it's not. And I don't know why. I don't know what it is about people that so badly, like, it's like a possession thing, which just makes me wonder if people even do the things they do because they genuinely want to. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud. It's just like, it raises suspicion when I hear people talk of things in such a weird, bitter way. And it could be anything. It really is anything. And I feel like it's too normalized. I feel like it's way too normalized, way too common to see people hurt people, to see people that are clearly suffering and are spinning a narrative and are supported. I feel like what happens is people that experience the same pain get together, and then they make each other feel better, not through having moved on or advice or anything like that, but rather through justifying their pain, which is a weird thing. It would be like if I, slam my finger on my door and then it hurts and it really, really, really hurts, and then a day goes by and it still hurts, and then somebody else comes up to me and they're like, "Oh, you slammed your finger too? I did too. Screw that door." And they start talking crap. And then it makes you feel good because you feel like you're being seen. You feel like you're being paid attention to, and that what happened to you is not wrong and you were wrong, right? That's a good feeling. It feels good to be supported in that way. But instead, that's obviously not, that's not the appropriate way to go about it. But that's what we do with every other type of pain. It seems like it always has to be spun. That's my main thing, I think, is that there always has to be some sort of like grandiose movement or gain or something, when it can never just be as simple as, hey, it happened, dog, move on. But anyways, I'm getting off track. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. If you disagree, you agree, let me know what you think down below. Hope you have a good rest of your day.